going to go where the facts take us. And the facts have taken us and point to the irony of this whole thing is that the ones that were screaming about Russia collusion were the ones who were themselves engaged in Russia collusion.
Projection and deflection. Project the very thing you're guilty on, or you're guilty of on your opponents. That certainly seems what we're seeing here. One of the things I got to ask Chairman Nunes was because people have been talking about declassification of some documents this week, the Broussard documents and that sort of thing. But I asked him, I said, do you think the American people are ever going to get to actually see the FISA applications in the documents? And he said, yes, I believe that they will. Do you think that is?
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. I see some of you already joining the discussion online. I really appreciate that. Dan writing on Facebook, our good friend Dan Borum. It's a brand new day to face the Philistines. Boy, oh boy, isn't that a... I mean, that made me laugh this morning. Get up out of bed, you tell yourself that. I mean, I think we all have, those moments, when you roll out of bed every morning. Hey, folks, welcome to the program. The phone number, call us or text us, 870-275-9799. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine, and we need your help to do that. We got a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Mr. Chuck Clifton from the Patriots of Act 746. Then at 7, a huge report has dropped. The great folks at Conduit for Commerce have a report, and it's called Follow the Money. It is a Follow the Money report on the Arkansas Republican primaries earlier this year. And you get to see which special interests back which candidates. And the results of this study, the results of this report, the Follow the Money report from Conduit for Commerce, are clear. I mean, it is clear that it doesn't matter. The special interests don't care which party you are in. They are going to back the candidate that is most likely to vote for larger government, and they're going to oppose the candidate that is most likely to vote for less government. Whether you're in, Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. And some really, I mean, all they basically have done is they've taken public information and they've compiled it, but they've made it to where it's easy to read. It's something that is digestible for the average person to really see that, that there are certain special interests, the ones who are entrenched, the ones who have been here in Arkansas the longest, and they are the kingmakers here in Arkansas. They are the ones. We'll be talking with Josh Waters about this report, and it looks fantastic, by the way. Feel free to go to conduitforcommerce.org, and it's right there on the front page. You scroll down just a little bit and click the PDF. And I would urge all of you out there listening to go ahead and download that PDF and then print it out for yourself so that you can really see and we highlight specific races. And we'll get into that at 7 o'clock. Then at 7:33, we'll be talking with the great folks from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics. There's a new report out. It's called the Transparency Index. We want to talk to them about that. We'll be talking with Dr. Mavuto Kalulu and Tara Acquia. They'll be on the program coming up 7:33 this morning. Okay, Let's start with the biggest news. And listen, I know tomorrow you have the meeting with Rod Rosenstein and President Trump. At the same time, you have the testimony with the Kavanaugh situation and Christine Blasey Ford, and they're still going back and forth. Yesterday, is she getting cold feet? What kind of demands are they making? Now they're trying to restrict media access. They only want certain outlets in there, talking about Christine Blasey Ford and that sort of thing, her attorney, who, by the way, a lot of people are looking into her attorney and possible connections with her attorney and Hillary Clinton. No surprise there. I will tell you this. That's going on tomorrow, and that's going to be the big news and story, and we'll talk about it when it happens. But what happened yesterday was President Trump gave a speech at the United Nations, and it was probably one of the best speeches that he's ever given. And his concept, I'm telling you, people, you've been hearing about this for a long time, this idea of globalism, or are you a globalist, and that sort of thing. Donald Trump, a lot of people, what is a globalist? How do you define it? Well, apparently, being anti-globalist is essentially just standing up for American sovereignty. Listen to this. I want you to hear this. Go ahead and go to the, is that a Periscope video? But it's from the White House. This is the beginning of President Trump's address to the United Nations yesterday.
Asian American unemployment have all achieved their lowest levels ever recorded. We've added more than 4 million new jobs, including 500,000 manufacturing jobs. We have passed the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history. We've started the construction of a major border wall, and we have greatly strengthened border security. We have secured record funding for our military, $700 billion this year, and $716 billion next year. Our military will soon be more powerful than it has ever been before. In other words, the United States is stronger, safer, and a richer country than it was when I assumed office less than 2 years ago. We are standing up for America, world. This is great news for our citizens and for peace-loving people everywhere. We believe that when nations respect the rights of their neighbors and defend the interests of their people, they can better work together to secure the blessings of safety, prosperity, and peace. Each of us here today is the emissary of a distinct culture, a rich history, and a people bound together by ties of memory, tradition, and the values that make our homelands like nowhere else on earth. That is why America will...
Hang on a second. I was having
will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance, control, and domination. I honor the right of every nation in this room to pursue its own customs, beliefs, and traditions. The United States will not tell you how to live or work or worship. We only ask that you honor our sovereignty in return. From Warsaw to Brussels to Tokyo to Singapore, it has been my highest honor to represent the United States abroad. I have forged close relationships and friendships and strong partnerships with the leaders of many nations in this room, and our approach has always yielded incredible change. With support from many countries here today, we have engaged with North Korea to replace the specter of conflict with a bold and new push for peace.
Okay, stop.
In June, I traveled
I would
to
encourage
Singapore
all
to
of
meet
you, if
face
you
to
do
face.
anything today, is to go and listen to the full speech. It is surprisingly, shockingly hard, or it was for me, to actually find the portion of the speech where he specifically rejected the ideology of globalism and embraced the doctrine of patriotism. But you heard him say a little bit there of global governance and everything else. Hey, look, we just want to respect everybody's sovereignty, right? We just want to respect everybody's sovereignty. What'd you say, Joe? Yeah, he does say it, but further on in the speech, he actually specifically says the United States rejects the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism. And basically, I don't know, when I was listening to this, I don't know if any other presidential candidate in the field, in the Republican field, certainly not in the Democrat field, would have ever delivered a speech. Maybe Rand Paul. I was like, okay, well, if Rand Paul would have won, the nomination and then somehow won Pennsylvania and, Wisconsin and Michigan and Florida, maybe Rand Paul would have delivered a speech, something like that. But I'm not even so sure that would happen. I mean, listen, it was incredible for an American president to go to the United Nations and say, hey, listen, we respect you, but, your sovereignty ends where ours begins. And here's the thing, and vice versa. And honestly, there might be some countries out there that are saying, okay, well, we never heard this before, but you need to prove this. You need to prove that America's sovereignty ends where ours begins as well. The idea of respecting other countries and wanting as long as other countries respect us. I mean, it was an incredible speech. It was an incredible speech. It's an incredible message, and it is a huge, huge shift in the way this country approaches foreign policy. I want you to understand that. I mean, for the longest of times, whether you were a Democrat or a Republican as a president, your United Nations speech was pretty much going to be the same thing. And that is not the case here. President Trump saying that America is governed by Americans. Now, this seems pretty much, should seem pretty basic. But if the president of the United States has to point that out, then there's clearly other forces that would argue otherwise. And then he talks about how, at the very beginning, listen, we are the strongest we've ever been. Our military will soon be the strongest it's ever been. Watch out. I mean, this is the Reagan peace through strength doctrine. Certainly that's what he's trying to convey there. The United States will not tell you how to live and work or worship. We only ask that you honor our sovereignty in return. We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism. Then the president goes on to denounce socialism in this speech as well, which is huge. You wouldn't want to offend maybe some of the European countries that certainly have way more, socialist tendencies than we do over here. But listen to what he said. He said, quote, virtually everywhere socialism or communism has been tried, it has produced suffering, corruption, and decay. Socialism's thirst for power leads to expansion, incursion, and oppression. We ask the nations gathered here to join us in calling for the restoration of democracy in Venezuela. It was an incredible speech. He talked about what's going on with North Korea and how that, I think there's going to be another meeting there as well. So, to me, it's a huge story. If you listen to anything else, after you listen to the Conduit News this morning, go and listen to President Trump's full address. And I for me personally, as I listened to it, I just couldn't believe. I knew what was happening is historic. And, one speech, probably doesn't change the world. But in terms of America's, how we are postured right now, it is starkly not the status quo. I guess that's what was really my impression is, wow, that's not a status quo United Nations speech. It's not. It's not. And it's probably got to well, a lot of people want to know why is President Trump like the most hated president, or we're told he's the most hated president, as far as the media, and, there's nothing he can do when they don't, heap criticism on him and that sort of thing. And then you've had in the past, now I think this may be changing, but you've even got people on the right who are, well, they're still out to get him. There's still people on the right, so-called right who are out to get the president. But there is this this just tendency to where, you've got Republicans and Democrats that seem to have a problem with President Trump. And it goes beyond the style, It goes beyond the tweets and it goes beyond the style. I think it goes to what the president is trying to do. And maybe it is the globalism. Maybe it is getting back to the consent of the governed, getting back to the United States Constitution in terms of America is governed by Americans. It's a very simple statement. But to a lot of people across the world, I think that's a threatening statement. The phone number is 870-275-9799. 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about some more stuff. Check out that Follow the Money report, though. It's a big deal. Up at conduitforcommerce.org. And it looks really sharp as well, the way it's all presented. It's very easy to digest for you. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
You have seen him on Fox News. He is the host of The Next Revolution. His name is Steve Hilton. He's also an author of the new book, Positive Populism, Revolutionary Ideas to Rebuild Economic Security, Family, and Community in America. And he joins us now this morning on Conduit News. Steve, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you.
So tell us what motivated you to write this new book, Positive Populism.
So this word populism, we've been hearing it for the last few years when we talk about politics. You heard it, obviously, in connection with Donald Trump's election, the way he beat all the establishment Republicans in the primary. You heard it in the UK with the Brexit vote and also with Bernie Sanders on the left. And now you're seeing it used.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Just real quick, check out the Conduit News report on this. So Conduit News is reporting on the Follow the Money report that has recently come out, and it's really, really good. Conduit for Commerce released a Follow the Money report today detailing the fundraising during the 2018 Arkansas Republican primaries. This is their executive summary. Quote, this report focuses on the Arkansas 2018 state legislative Republican primary. It uses financial data to identify the players in Arkansas politics and the candidates they elect. If you have ever wondered why an elected official votes a certain way, follow the money. The report provides in-depth analysis of fundraising for the following state legislative primaries. Breann Davis versus Bob Bailey, State Senate District 16. Representative James Sturch versus Senator Linda Collins Smith, State Senate District 19. Cole Peck versus Representative Dan Sullivan, House District 53. Representative Bob Ballinger versus Senator Brian King, Senate District 5. And Representative Matt Pitch versus Frank Glidewell, Senate District 8. Excuse me. Conduit for Commerce, this is again a quote from the report. Conduit for Commerce found that establishment Republican candidates whose votes favor bigger government were elected with the large and unified financial support of Arkansas's most established longtime special interest groups, which hold no party allegiance. The report also dives into giving from the healthcare industry, highlighting their impact on these races. From the takeaway section, Conduit for Commerce says, if you want to know which way the political winds are blowing, it helps to know which way the campaign cash is flowing. By tracking the funding of selected Republican primaries in 2018, Conduit for Commerce presents this comprehensive report to educate on who has the greatest influence on government policies in the state of Arkansas. You can download the full report right there, and it's all there for you at Conduit News. So this story here from Conduit News on what CFC has done is really good. Reference that. Share that with your friends, by the way. Also over at conduitnews.com, article from yesterday, friends with benefits, financial benefits. You can see this. This is more on the loan gate. Some people are texting me loan gate. Now, Joe, first of all, thanks for being back. Okay. So, Joe, you may have missed the show because I know you had a little 2 days off at the beginning of this week. But you let me just tell you what's happened. Okay, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Joe, on Saturday or Sunday came out with a story that said that Senator Jim Hendren had given Jake Files, loaned him $4,000, okay, to cover some hot checks. And this was back in 2015, right? And it really just highlights the good old boy system. But then it also said that at the time, Democrat State Representative Joe Jett loaned Jeremy Gillum, the Republican Speaker of the House, $16,000 because his farm needed some help. His berry farm, I think, needed some assistance. Well, it just so happens, yada, 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 that then Joe Jett switched from a Democrat to a Republican and maintained and kept his appointment as the chairman of Revenue and Taxation. It's one of the most powerful committees down there. And it's really one of the most debated topics politically is, taxes, tax policy, how the state of Arkansas is going to take money from the people. It's always been a hot topic in terms of, campaigning and that sort of thing. So it's a very, very, and then of course we find out yesterday, a follow-up story that we had another loan from Charlie Collins above $12,500 to then State Representative Nate Bell. And so this practice, it's really shocked the Marble Palace down there because the people are figuring out that they're loaning everybody else money. Well, so how do they have so much money? That's a great question, Joe. Here's the thing. It's not illegal to loan somebody money, right? It's not illegal to do that, but you got to disclose it. And the thing with the Jeremy Gillum, the Speaker of the House, can you imagine maybe why the Republican Speaker of the House wouldn't want to disclose that the Democrat gave him $16,000? I mean, there's obviously political incentive to not disclose that because people would be asking the questions that I'm asking now. Has Joe Jett essentially been the shadow Speaker of the House this whole time? The Speaker of the House controls where bills go. The Speaker of the House controls who gets on what committee. And then you look at the other three state representatives that gave Joe Jett $700 each, And, they either got chairmanships or they got co-chairmanships or vice chairmanships is what I'm trying to say. The whole thing, it is what it is. It is what it is. And the appearance of impropriety is, at this point, as corrupt as this, place is down there, it might as well be the same thing as impropriety. Because the people of Arkansas have no confidence in you guys, right? And these are Republicans engaging in this activity. And it's really sad, to say the least. So that's all up right now at Conduit for News. Friends with benefits, financial benefits. And the Follow the Money report, go to conduitnews.com right now. We'll talk more about this with Mr. Josh Waters coming up at 7:05. Don't go anywhere.
To describe all these election results in Europe, where the old guard is being kicked out and people are looking for a big sweeping change. And so you hear this word populism. And up till now, I think people, when they think about it, see it in terms of what it's against. Populists are against the elites. They're against bad trade deals and the rigged economy and uncontrolled immigration and so on. What I wanted to do was say, okay, those are all legitimate grievances. And people are right to be angry at the way things have been run because people have had a raw deal. If you think about the last few decades, the rich have got richer and richer, but working people, their incomes have been flat or falling for about 44 years. That's what the statistics show. And there's been an agenda put forward by Republicans and establishment Democrats, establishments on both sides, which has been enthusiastic about globalization and automation and, as I said, uncontrolled immigration, the centralization of power in the economy and in government. All these things have really benefited those at the top, people who work in the knowledge economy and in the thriving urban centers on the coast of America. They've done really well, but the rest of the country has been left behind by all that. So people are right to be angry, but what I wanted to do was say not just what populism is against, but what is it for? What is a positive agenda, a set of ideas that will actually help deal with the problems, to give people that economic security that seems to have been taken away from them over the last 2 years, that's going to help people get opportunity, that's going to deal with big problems like family breakdown, the way communities have had their power taken away, the way that our political system is so corrupt. What are we going to do to change that? What are the practical solutions? And that's what you'll find in my book, Positive Populism.
As I'm reading it, I know it's available at Amazon.com. I'm reading the synopsis here. The last paragraph is very intriguing to me, Steve. It says, for too long, populism has been defined by those who despise it. It really is this concept that just screams elitism.
Called
it's like there's a disdain
and
for what the people, the majority of the people want, and we need them to manage our lives for us.
That's exactly right. And you've had this terrible patronizing condescension towards regular working people who just want the basic things, right? They want to know that if they work hard, they can live on what they earn. They want decent schools for their kids. They want a chance to get on. They want safety and security. They want to know that the borders are being protected, that we don't just have a free-for-all where you have immigration at such a level that it's undermining economic security, and it's also changing the way that people think about society too quickly in a way that people can't.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, 870-275-9799. Thanks so much for being with us today. I want to remind everybody that the Patriots of Act 746 are on a mission to educate the people of the state of Arkansas. They work with local law enforcement on the Second Amendment rights, specifically what your rights are here in Arkansas. They are doing incredible work out there. They are really the definition of what is a grassroots movement. Of course, the Patriots of Act 746 started with a law called Act 746, which decriminalized the possession of a firearm or weapon in general here in the state of Arkansas, essentially legally bringing in what is known as constitutional carry, which means essentially that, there's no law that says that you're allowed to sit on your front porch and drink iced tea, but because there's no law that says you can't sit on your porch and drink iced tea, you're perfectly free to do so. That is the status of Arkansas gun laws right now. And a lot of people in law enforcement haven't gotten the message, but more and more are, thanks to the Patriots of Act 746. So go to Facebook and check them out. Just in the search bar, search Patriots of Act 746 and ask to become a member of the group. Joining us now to talk more about this, we have from the Patriots of Act 746, once again, Mr. Chuck Clifton is with us. Chuck, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Glad that you could be with us. Hey, what's the membership on the page up to right now? I mean, it was, first it was 9,000, 10,000. Now I think it's, 15, 16,000 now?
Yeah, we're over 16,000 at this point.
I mean, that is just incredible.
And it's growing more every day.
Wow. Now, where are you calling from, Chuck? What part of the state are you calling from?
I'm actually calling from Elkins up out of Fayetteville, out of northwest Arkansas.
Okay. So that's a very active – there's an active chapter up in northwest Arkansas. There's a very active chapter in northeast Arkansas. Then you've got some southern Arkansas chapters that are really starting to they're kind of at the ground floor, but they're making a lot of progress as well. It's been pretty neat to see these individual chapters, organize and really try to – have an impact on their local governments.
Yes, it is, Paul. The involvement people get into these groups is just amazing sometimes. When you have a meet and greet and you have 30 people, 50 people show up. I think the Northwest page now is over 600, and I believe Tim and them over there in Northeast has theirs up over 1,500 now.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
The Southern groups are growing. They're adding more down there, Lynn, and Defo and them's adding more every day down there. It's a movement, and people are starting to wake up and see that the state has tried to take our right, but yet we have taken it back, and they want to know all the information they can get.
Do you guys have any meet and greets, in that area, coming up soon, up where you are?
Oh, yeah, Paul, we sure do. Matter of fact, on the 29th of September, the Northwest chapter is going to have a meet and greet in Harrison at the Western Sizzling at 2 o'clock. Mark West is actually going to be a guest speaker there. Then in Central Arkansas, there's going to be one on October the 6th at the Golden Corral in Conway at 2 p.m. Mark West is also a speaker there, one of the guest speakers. I myself am also a guest speaker at the one in Central Arkansas. In the Northeast Arkansas chapter, they're going to have a meet and greet on October the 13th at Frankie's Place in Newport. Mm-hmm. That's going to be at 2:30. I'm sure Tim has a whole list of guests that will show up there.
Yeah.
And then the Southeast Arkansas has got one September the 29th at El Ranchito in Warren, and that's also at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So there's going to be plenty of meet and greets around the state for people to get out. These meet and greets are open to anybody that wants to come. They're open to the general public. So anybody that's out there that would like to come to one of these and find out what we're about, you're more than welcome.
And I really think, once you go to one of these meetings, and the one in Newport on October the 13th, I'm looking at my schedule, and I'm going to try to make that one, but I'm not 100%. I can't 100% commit to it yet, but I will here in the next couple of days be able to make a decision one way or the other on that Saturday in the 13th in Newport. But once you actually attend one of these meetings and you see the I don't know, just how organized everything is, you really get the feel for what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, this is a movement to try to say, listen, the human right to self-defense here in Arkansas is as strong as it's ever been, and we just need more and more law enforcement to recognize this fact.
Yeah, that's true, Paul. And I think more and more law enforcement are recognizing that fact, that 573-120 changed whenever they amended that. That changed the whole character of unlawfully carrying a weapon. And slowly but surely, more and more law enforcement are getting educated on that. And the more law enforcement we can educate, the better it's going to be for law enforcement and the general public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the general public, I mean, not only do you get your rights, but your tax dollars aren't going to be wasted by, somebody that wrongfully arrests, somebody for carrying a weapon when they're not doing anything illegal. And then, of course, you get the prosecutor who eventually, drops the charges, or you get taken to court and then you're found innocent. I mean, it's at this point, it can also save taxpayer money.
Oh, well, yeah, sure it does, because those prosecutors, their budget, they only have so much money. And if they're prosecuting unwinnable cases, then that's just a waste of tax money, which in turn maybe lets some criminal not get prosecuted that should have been prosecuted.
That's a great point. We're talking with Chuck Clifton from the Patriots VAC 746. Okay, so you're calling up from Northwest Arkansas out of Elkins. Chuck, you guys got a Senate race up there going on between, I guess it's Don Clements is the Republican, trying to challenge. It's an open seat left vacant by Uvalde Lindsay, but you got State Representative Greg Leding, a Democrat, trying to make the leap up to the higher chamber there. What are your feelings and thoughts on that race?
Okay, Paul, I just want to remind everybody who Mr. Greg Leding is. Mr. Greg Leding is one of the sponsors for the age restrictions on so-called assault weapons. He is also one of the co-sponsors on the red flag law that they have wrote and come out with. And that is somebody that we do not need in the Senate. Don is a very strong Second Amendment supporter. I've spoke with Don numerous occasions. I actually went and helped her put out some signs Saturday. She is all for the Second Amendment. She's for a sustainable government, less taxes. The government shouldn't be taxing its citizens to the point that, well, some people can't afford to even buy groceries, Charlie, because they're paying taxes. Don's also, she wants to do reforms to the education system to prepare students for today's high-tech workplace. Reforms to educate that support technical skills based on learning that will allow us to create high-quality pathways where students can obtain recognized credentials and strong early work experiences. Trade skills. That's one of the things that people don't think about in Arkansas is if you look at the Help Wanted sections, like in Craigslist and stuff, our skilled trades in Arkansas are hurting bad. HVACs, plumbers, electricians. There's just not enough people to fill those jobs. And that's something that Dawn is working hard to do, and that's one of her goals whenever she gets in is to help people get that training so that they can get those jobs. And I don't know if you've had an electrician or a plumber out your house lately, but those people don't come cheap. They're very well paid.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I had a plumber in my house yesterday. Matter of fact.
Then you know what I'm talking about.
All right, so that's interesting. Let's talk about this race a little bit more. Okay, so open seat, Representative Greg Leding, Can we label him as anti-Second Amendment? I mean, would you label him as anti-Act 746?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would definitely label him anti-Second Amendment.
Okay, so then you got Don Clements, Republican. She's not anti-Second Amendment. She's for Second Amendment, and she's for those other things that you talked about. But I guess my question is...
here's something else.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to point out, too, that Don believes that every time the legislature passes a new law, they need to repeal two in the process.
Yeah, I think that'd be fantastic. I also think that if you go to jail because you're a convicted felon, that all of your laws that you sponsored need to be, wiped off the books. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be a start anyway, Paul.
Yeah, it really would. Can you imagine if all of John Wood's and Jake Files' laws that they sponsored, I'm talking, we're lead sponsors of, just, went away because they're now in jail? I mean, especially when you're in jail for, honest services fraud. I mean, it's ridiculous. Well, but talk to me about this. I mean, I think everybody knows listening, and if they don't know, I'm going to tell them now. That district up there, with Fayetteville, is very, very, very blue, very liberal, very progressive, and so it is an uphill battle for Don Clements, right?
Yes, it is. Paul, hers is Senate District 4, which runs from just north of Springdale, about AQ Chicken or so, and it runs down to Greenland, over to Prairie Grove, and then over into Elkins, kind of a square there with a little leg on it. And that is probably one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most liberal districts in the state. It consists of the whole city of Fayetteville and the University of Arkansas. So she has an uphill battle, but I spoke with Dawn last night, and they're feeling real good about this. She's been getting out, talking to people, knocking on doors, explaining the difference between her and Mr. Letting, and she feels very good about it. And boy, we sure hope she wins it.
Oh, I mean, of course, it'd be a huge upset in that area. But the fact that
that would turn that seat red instead of blue.
Yeah, it really would. And the fact that you have Greg Letting getting out there and trying to sponsor some of these red flag laws, as well as, like you said, he wants to change the age restriction for, I'm sure what they would call assault rifles, but you and I just might call them semi-automatic weapons, right?
That's correct. Assault is an action. It's not an object. I think that whenever Letting and them done that, they knew it was a red herring, Paul. They knew that bill would never get anywhere. But what's going to happen is the Republicans are going to say, well, that bill is bad. We need to write our own. So they're going to write another one, and then they're going to try to get everybody to go along with it. Say, well, it's better than the ones the Democrat wrote, so which one did y'all rather have? Well, I'd rather have none of them because, to start with, the red flag laws, Arkansas already has laws to cover that. And as far as the so-called assault weapons ban, I figure if a young man is old enough to go to war and use a real military-style weapon, he should be able to have an AR when he gets back home.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And so Greg Letting wants to raise that from 18 to 21. Is that right?
That is correct. Mm-hmm. And now that doesn't just include ARs. Anything with a threaded barrel on it. So if you have a handgun that has a threaded barrel, or say you have a .22 rifle that you squirrel hunt with,
mm-hmm.
that has a threaded barrel on it, well, that would now fall into an assault weapon.
So you're saying that wouldn't that encompass most hunting rifles then? Like, I mean, I shoot a 270. It does have a detachable magazine. It can hold like one or like three other bullets in it. So would I now have to be 21 in order to buy that?
The way I understood the law is anything that holds over 10 rounds.
Okay, over 10 rounds. Okay.
And I could be wrong on that, Paul. I don't have the law in front of me. And whenever I read that thing, it kind of read like Chinese arithmetic, like most bills do, but they do that on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing I would like to say, too, over in northeast Arkansas over there, we have Mr. Sturch and Ms. Epperson running over there. Ms. Epperson, I believe, in my opinion, is more pro-Second Amendment than James Sturch.
Wow, and she's running as a Democrat, though.
And she's running as a Democrat. Susie Epperson also went to the September meet and greet for Patriots Back 746 in northeast Arkansas. I don't think Mr. Sturch has showed up at any of them. Well, he may be looking for his phone so somebody can call him and tell him where to go. So
yeah, he need. From what I'm told, man, there's some vicious memes going around. Hey, let me ask you this, Chuck. You think I should have Susie Epperson on this program?
I honestly do, Paul. I think she would shake things up because she definitely she dances to the beat of a different drum, and I think that with having her on the show, I think that would shake things up, especially in the Republican Party whenever they find out that the Democrat that's running against Sturch more conservative and more pro-Second Amendment than he is.
Wow. Well, you know what? Just that statement alone is shaking things up. I can feel it. Well, hey, you know what? Maybe the establishment down there. I mean, they listen to this program so much, and they're mad. If I've had Mark West, the libertarian, on, I've had some, and they get really, really upset by that. It really upsets them. So, I mean, you know what? This would be, of course, there's been other Democrats that have come on this program before. I mean, Greg Leding being one of them. He's been on before. Scott Baltz has been on before. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all about ideas and debate, and, I think that's healthy.
Yeah, well, Paul, that would make you fair and balanced.
This is true. This is true. Well, hey, Chuck, I really appreciate you coming on the program, sir, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And, I hope your events up in Northwest Arkansas go very, very well.
Well, thank you, Paul, and as always, we really appreciate you giving us a platform to get our message out to people. And I don't think this organization could be what it is today without the help of you and Conduit News.
All right. I appreciate that, Chuck, very much. You have a great day. Folks, it's Patriots of X 746. Go to Facebook.com. In the search bar, search for Patriots of X 746. It's a closed group. Ask to become a member. And, again, they're up over 16,000 people now. We have to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Can't accept and get used to. And all of those things are perfectly reasonable concerns. And yet the elitists who have driven forward the policies that they benefit from, but the people who suffer complain about it, then they just describe them as racist, and they dismiss the whole thing and say, well, you're just racist, you're nativist, you're just, you've got to get with the program. This is the modern world. Suck it up. And I find that so offensive, because they've designed a world that works for them. But for most people, it doesn't work, and that's why we need to change it. We need to actually it's not just a change of policy. One of the things that comes out of my book very strongly is we got to undermine the power structures of elitism, the way that they've put together this alliance. I call it the axis of elitism between big government and big business, the way that the administrative state and the bureaucracy supports
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so go over to conduitnews.com and you can check out this Follow the Money article. Get the PDF now. It's out now from Conduit for Commerce. Follow the Money, selected Republican primaries from 2018. We're going to be talking more about this at 7:05 with Mr. Josh Waters. Then at 7:33 coming up today, we're going to be talking with the Great folks from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, Dr. Mavuto Kalulu and Tara Acquia, on their new Transparency Index. It has to do with the 75 counties here in Arkansas and how transparent are they. And from what I can tell, most of the counties here in Arkansas, they don't put things like budgets and meeting minutes online for people to see. So we'll talk more about that. But as to this Follow the Money report, I mean, if you really start to look, I mean, here's the methodology. To understand who funded selected 2018 State House Republican primary elections, Conduit for Commerce collected contribution records from the Arkansas Secretary of State Financial Disclosure website. Next, candidate, individual donor, and political action committee information was sorted and tagged. These donations were then analyzed, cross-referencing PAC filings, lobbyist filings, and other research of the individuals and entities contributing. This allowed for greater transparency and a peek at the special interests behind the political contributions. Then, all collected data was organized by category. This analysis also allowed grouping between similar interests, entities, and persons. For example, healthcare interests were grouped together. Further analysis determined if the contributor was in or out of state and whether in or out of the district of the candidate. The full analysis and sorting allowed for the grouping together of special interests donated significant amounts across campaigns. So you essentially have a very, very, very small community at the Marble Palace in Little Rock dictating who's going to win these elections. And that's what you can see from the Republican primaries so far. The table of contents, you have 3 sections here. You have elections, candidates, special interests, and then, of course, conclusions and takeaways. So you need to go right now and check this out. We're going to be talking more about this in the coming segment here. So, and it's a really, really good PDF. Let's see, what else do we have? So just a little bit Arkansas News Roundup here. Remember, we had the plant workers facing deportation a couple of, I guess what was this, 2 weeks ago? You had ICE show up in Alma, and 28 employees were basically detained or arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement at a processing plant there. 28 people there were detained. Let's see here. We have this other article. University of Arkansas at Little Rock is now forced to tighten their belt. There's news about some budgeting issues there. Then, of course, you have the University of Arkansas trustees are okaying a plan to borrow $27 million for services. So you have all of those stories that have been, kind of over the course of the last couple of weeks is what I'm trying to say. Hey, folks, I'm going to be, Conduit for Action is going to be in Arkansas County tomorrow. The Arkansas County Republican Committee meeting is tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Bullpen Restaurant in DeWitt. Okay? So if you want to attend that, and those of you who are listening out of Arkansas County on KWAC, KWAK out of Stuttgart, that's 1240 AM or 102.7 FM out of Stuttgart, Conduit for Action will be speaking at the Arkansas County Republican Committee event. That is at 6 o'clock tomorrow night at the Bullpen Restaurant in DeWitt. So make sure you come out for that, and I'll tell you more. I'll remind you more about that, later on in the broadcast. Let's see here. One more thing on the Friends with Benefits. I will just say, financial benefits. Friends with Benefits, financial benefits. That article, again, up right now at conduitnews.com. conduitnews.com. And probably the biggest takeaway from the Friends with Benefits, financial benefits argument would be We've seen this before. You get caught loaning a legislator money, and you say, well, we're just friends. That is exactly what Bruce Hawkins, the lobbyist, said when they were caught, when he was caught, and they finally reported a $30,000 loan to now convicted felon Senator Jake Files. And now, of course, Joe Jett is caught giving Republican Speaker of the House Jeremy Gillum $16,000. It's just a loan, and if you criticize it, it's because you're against friendship. Yeah, we did all of that, Joe. Joe's like, oh, he's going to shut you down. You say roll call one more time, and I'm shutting you down. See, we did all that. We did that Monday and Tuesday. Yeah. Somebody answer me this question. Was Joe Jett the shadow Speaker of the House this whole time? That would explain a lot, right?
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Power staying in the hands of those at the top. We've got to change all of that. And that's why they don't like it, by the way. That's why they're so dismissive of the concerns and so desperate. You see it now in Washington, so desperate to cling on to their power because they don't like the idea of losing power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely seems like, they do have a disdain for populism. I think there is probably no more clear example of that than the election of President Donald Trump and everything that seems to be being done to thwart his agenda, to thwart the will of the American people. And you're seeing that now with the slow Brexit, if a Brexit ever happens at all.
Exactly. Because the people, in the elitists who love the idea of centralizing power in Brussels, in the European Union, taking power out of the hands of the people through their elected representatives and running things through the bureaucracy. They hated Brexit because it undermines their power. And so that's exactly what you're seeing happen. They're trying to basically overturn the vote. That's what's happening here too, where you've got the establishment in Washington. Again, it's not a partisan thing. You've got Republicans and Democrats the same. They can't stand. They basically think the people made a mistake. And they think, well, look, you voted for the wrong person. These policies are stupid, and we're going to stop them. Regardless of what you, the electorate, may think, we know best. And so that's what they're trying to do. Now, what I set out in my book is that it's not enough just to be angry about that. You actually have to take their power away permanently. And that means undermining their structures. So, for example, there's a chapter in my book about the administrative state and the bureaucracy. And there's specific ideas for what we do. First of all, we don't really, they're so shadowy, we don't know who they are. We've got to unmask this shadowy bureaucracy. We've got to publish the names and the job descriptions and the organization charts of the bureaucracies so we can see very clearly who they are, what they're supposed to do, and who we can get rid of, either by taking their powers and transferring them to state and local government or just getting rid of them entirely. I think in the end, this is my experience working in the government back in the UK many years ago, is that you can't really reform all this. You just got to cut it, literally cut it by a huge amount, not just a 10% cut, as people sometimes talk about, but 90% cut. Get rid of them. Then you can really start to give power back to the people. So the book is full of specific ideas like that. People aren't going to agree with every single thing in the book, but the point is that we've got to have a broader-based populist movement to carry this forward. It's not just about one presidential candidate and one election. If we're going to really turn things around, we need a movement of people who believe in these ideas and who are going to run for office and change things for the long term. And that's really what I wanted to do with this book, is start that conversation and provide a basis for some ideas for this long-term populist movement.
We're talking with Steve Hilton. His new book, again, is Positive Populism, Revolutionary Ideas to Rebuild Economic Security, Family, and Community in America. He's also the host of The Next Revolution on Fox News. I know you guys out there have seen him. When you were just describing, Steve, this, bureaucratic state that we're in, we've got all these guys who are lifers, they're unelected. I mean, that sounds a lot like what people are trying to describe when they come up with this term deep state. What do you think about the term deep state?
I think it's very helpful. I think it really captures something that's true about the bureaucracy. I'm going to tell you a story that is from the book, which illustrates what I'm talking about. It's from the UK again, but before I worked with David Cameron, the former Prime Minister. We actually then fell out over Brexit. He called the referendum and wanted to stay in the EU. I went back to the UK. I've been living in America now for 6.5 years. We moved my family in 2012, but I went back there to campaign for Brexit. So I completely was on the other side to him. But, you know, previously we worked together. And before we were elected, I went to see the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, to get his advice. He'd been out of office for a time, and you know, I'd seen him say a few interesting things about his experience of being in government, so I wanted to just get his advice about how to do things, how to run things. And he was really interesting. He was very gracious, very helpful, and one of the things that really stuck in my mind, he said, when you get there, when you get to 10 Downing Street, right at the heart of power, you have to understand that the civil service, the bureaucracy, they genuinely see it as their civic duty, their national duty, to prevent you from implementing your policies. They see it as their duty to block the...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is hour number 2. Good morning to you. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. It's a pretty big day today because this Follow the Money report, I think, is huge. Conduit for Commerce. As we go over to Conduit News, you can check this out, but conduitnews.com reporting that Conduit for Commerce has a new report out. Follow the Money. It specifically focuses on the Arkansas Republican primaries. Here to talk more about this, we've got Mr. Josh Waters is back with us on the line. Josh, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
Yes, so tell us a little bit about this. I mean, what do you see? First of all, overall, what is the big takeaway from this report? We're going to get into the numbers here in a minute, but what do you think the big takeaway from this report is?
I think the big takeaway, Paul, is if you really want to know what the special interests are behind and the reasons behind some of the votes we see from our legislators, you need to follow the money. And that's said over and over again, but sometimes that's hard to do. And so what this report does is put it in a succinct format to where people can see exactly how much they got overall, but also further breakdown of the interest behind that money. And so I think one of the slogans there and one of the takeaways is to know which way the votes are going, see which way the campaign cash is flowing. And I think that's the big takeaway. And maybe underneath that, for the Republican primary aspect, you saw kind of this dynamic set up in these Republican races between, limited government, pro-small business, PACs, and individuals and others, almost uniformly lined up then against kind of the monolith, to use the word from someone else, of these special interests and lobbyists that unified against those other candidates who are supported by those PACs that were limited government and conservative. And so, those special interests don't have, or I would say probably don't have, principles of limited government and conservative behind the reason they're giving and donating to these candidates. Whereas, you look at these PACs, the limited government PACs, Commerce and Action, it's all based on the principles of limited government and less government. And so I think that's the big takeaway from this. When you follow the money, that's really what you saw in most of these primaries that we looked at.
Right now on the screen, we've got the special election that happened in the Senate District 16. The Republican primary, rather, in Senate District 16. This was, this is one that I'm certainly familiar with. You had establishment-backed Breanne Davis, who was victorious over limited government Bob Bailey. And look at the difference here. You have the total raise, Breanne Davis, $162,470. Bob Bailey, his total was $47,685. And, I mean, really, number one, with $47,685, Bob Bailey did extremely well in terms of the amount of votes that he got in the first, the first election and the runoff. It really does say that, even if you are, and this, by the way, drove the establishment nuts, they started complaining about money from outside the district and everything else when most of Breanne Davis's money, a lot of that was coming from, let's see, out of district, 76.9% of her money came from out of district, which is essentially the exact same amount that came to Bob Bailey. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, this is a really concise breakdown here. I mean, look, Josh, at the healthcare-related contributions. Breanne Davis with $52,325 in healthcare-related contributions to Bob Bailey's $2,350. You think maybe that healthcare or Obamacare private option was a big decider or influencer in this particular election?
Yeah, Paul, I think when you look at those numbers, you can really say that, and that's a reason why Conduit for Commerce put out this report. It's one thing to go on and look on the website and see the name of a person or the name of an entity gave, $2,700. Well, what does that really mean? And so what Conduit for Commerce did was dig deeper and look at, okay, who is this entity? Are they represented by lobbyists? Cross-referencing lobbyist reports, cross-referencing the names of officers on political action committees, and really being able to group these together and see the interests that are actually behind the name or the PAC or the entity. Now, so when you look at that, go ahead.
I was just say, so that must have been a daunting task. I mean, what you're talking about is, okay, here's, like you said, here's just a $2,700 contribution, but how do you determine? Okay, that's a healthcare related contribution.
That's a great question, and I'm really excited to see the report in the final format it's in, because when I first came on and started doing work for Conduit for Commerce when I was in law school, this was one of the first projects I worked on. And back then, we didn't have the system that we have now online, where you can go on and basically download in a spreadsheet all the data of the contributions. Back then, you had to go line by line on these financial disclosure reports and enter it into the spreadsheet and then look it all up. So I also want to give a shout-out to Hannah Webb. She helped us a lot doing a lot of this research up front, pulling this data, organizing it, sorting it. And then, most of this is all public information. Maybe looking more into some websites, but if you have an internet connection, you can find most all this information out there. It's then being able to get it all and basically connect the dots, showing, okay, well, this person's an officer in this PAC, but they're also aligned with this organization. That organization is represented by this lobbyist. And so just drawing, connecting the dots, it was a process that took several months to get to the final form. But that's the importance of following the money. It's not just looking at the name or something, but looking at the interest behind the money.
So I would imagine if you've got an officer of a political action committee, and that political action committee gives to a particular candidate, and then the officer themselves gives an individual contribution, then that would all go under the same special interest.
Yes, and, in the report, when you look through, and the way we kind of put it is comparing kind of big numbers, total amount raised versus total amount raised, breaking it down in district, out of district, the healthcare-related number. So that's the first part of the report, looking at the individual races. Next, a big and even more finer detail is each individual candidate, almost all of their larger contributions are laid out under their name and show, when you group them together, okay, how much total did they actually get from people and entities and PACs associated with the Arkansas Hospital Association. or the Arkansas Healthcare Association. So we have that. And then even further than that, Paul, you can go just look at the Arkansas Healthcare Association and the report and see, okay, how does their breakdown among candidates that they gave to? And so it really does a good job looking at from kind of three different ways of following the money to the elections themselves, to the candidate, and then looking at the people and interest behind some of these PACs and other organizations.
Yeah, and Joe's scrolling down to get to that. We want to focus on some of these other races as well, but Joe's scrolling down to show the other methodology in terms of breaking down the Arkansas Healthcare Association. Yeah, right there, Joe. So you can see where everything is broken out. You know, you see ASA PAC there, Arkansas Medical Society Association. I mean, this is pretty detailed stuff. I do have to point out there on the last slide with the Breanne Davis and the Bob Bailey situation, she raised more, not just more total, $162,000 versus $47,000, but her health care contributions are $52,325. So from the healthcare industry alone, she outraised Bob Bailey. That to me is a huge number.
Yeah, and a little caveat in there. We did include in there, the non-money contributions, because those could have been things like a mailer or an ad in a newspaper, and so they were, going towards the election or defeat of a candidate. And Bob Bailey did have a significant number of non-money contributions, but actual, hard money contributions, that was the number. She had more hard money contributions from healthcare related interests.
This summary here, being an open Senate seat with candidates on both sides of the GOP, big government establishment and limited government conservative, Senate District 16 race is the poster child for how special interests in Arkansas work together, regardless of party affiliation, to elect the candidate least likely to vote for smaller government or significant changes in state house policies. That right there may be, I think, one of the most powerful parts in this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. There's actually a separate presentation that's done. Conduit co-founders Brenda Vasicella and Joe Maynard, and it's kind of the anatomy of a Republican primary, and it's probably 50 or 60 pages of documents looking at the financial disclosures, looking at the mailers, looking at the ads in newspapers, and comparing the messaging, comparing who's backing who. And that was a really good example, I think, that race of seeing the interests that are represented on both sides there. So thankful for Conduit co-founder Brenda Vasicella for her work on this. And also want to give a shout-out to Alice Norman, who did a lot of the great design work that really made this look and pop the way that people need to, consume it. And so I really appreciate all of her work on this as well.
All right, let's look at the James Sturch race and the Linda Collins Smith race. Let's look at their financials. Joe's got that up for us. James Sturch raising a total of $77,724.85. Linda Collins Smith, $34,546. Now look again at the healthcare-related contributions. James Sturch getting $35,000 out of his $77,000 from healthcare-related contributions. Linda Collins Smith, $6,050 of her $34,000 from healthcare-related contributions. I mean, here it is again. Healthcare is, this is the driving force. This is what it seems to me. I mean, if you take this out, it's the driving force of who's controlling, who gets to, who gets to be in office. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, and Paul, going back a few years, you really saw an uptick in that number after the private option, now what's called Arkansas Works, was passed. That was really when I first started looking at these numbers and comparing them, kind of 2010, 2012 races, and then 2014, 2016. The healthcare-related interest and money has just really gone up and up and up each cycle. And it's a $2 billion program, the Arkansas Works, Obamacare Medicaid expansion program. And so it's needing to be protected.
And we see this again. Now we're looking at Cole Peck. Cole Peck was backed by healthcare, the healthcare lobby a big time. You have Cole Peck raising $60,000 against incumbent State Representative Dan Sullivan. Now, Dan Sullivan here actually, he won. He's one of the limited government candidates on this list, the few that won. But then again, you look, healthcare-related contributions, 35,000 of his 60 came from healthcare industry. Dan Sullivan, 6,300 of his 46,000 came from the healthcare. I mean, again, similar. We're seeing the same thing. Scrolling down to Bob Ballinger and Brian King. No surprise here. Brian gets the least out of all the limited government candidates. Brian King gets the least from healthcare-related contributions so far. Bob Ballinger raises a total of $77,714 to Brian King's $85,000. But healthcare-related contributions, $33,390 go to Bob Ballinger. 1,450 healthcare-related contributions go to Senator Brian King. Of course, Bob Ballinger beat Senator King in that primary. But again, look at the who's controlling, who is the special interest, and they are winning. And I'm tired of them winning, quite frankly.
Yeah, and Paul, this something else too. This is just money raised. I know with Cole Peck as an example, he actually spent, I think, north of $100,000 because he put in so much of his own money. And this is also only money that's been reported. There might be people out there, interests out there that have, personally done things, spent money or time or whatever that didn't end up on a financial report. And I think, the Ballinger race as well, he outspent Brian King because he was able to move over a lot of carryover funds from previous campaigns. And so this is just, money raised.
Okay.
But when you look at money spent, some of these candidates will outspend even more than what they raised.
I got you. That's a good point to make, that they spent more than they raised. Then you scroll down here to the other race at a Senate District 8 at a Fort Smith. You had Matt Pitch, State Representative Matt Pitch versus former State Representative Frank Glidewell. He raised a total of $124,000 to Frank Glidewell's $25,000. Frank Glidewell only getting $500, according to this report, from healthcare-related contributions. Matt Pitch getting $20,300 out of his $124,000. Again, we see that you have the same kingmakers who are picking sides, again, regardless of political affiliation. It doesn't matter about party affiliation. It is who is least likely to vote for, a bigger government. And that's what's going to determine, who they support. Or who they oppose, rather. Who they oppose.
Right. And, you see this, and that's why I wanted to put this report together. Because under Arkansas law, an individual or PAC or whoever can donate $2,700 per election. Well, $2,700, isn't the 50, 40,000, whatever number, we end up with these totals. But when you look across races in every primary, some of the same PACs and individuals and groups giving, max contributions to almost all of these candidates, these more establishment candidates, you really see the impact that they have. And, Paul, they're not able to do that just in these few Republican primary races. They have enough money to do that across the state, cycle after cycle, in just about any primary or general election that they want. If the more limited government side spends, 40 or 50,000, they're going to spend 100,000 every time, every race. And until that changes, I'm not sure, what the path forward is. But, I would encourage people that you don't have to have the most money. That's been proven. But you do have to have enough money.
We're talking with Josh Waters, and I really appreciate you breaking this down with us. I've scrolled down in the report, the Follow the Money report, to where I guess you actually have specific special interests that have now been named. I think this might be the best part. I love the candidate breakdown, but for example, when you get to the actual part on special interests, where it says right here, Stevens Group. So Stevens Group, you guys give a history of when they were when they started, 1933. How the Stevens Group contributions to candidates of interest of $21,950, and you break it down into each race: Breon Davis, James Church, Dan Sullivan, Bob Ballinger, Matt Pitch. And I think this is very telling. What made you guys want to really break it down to really highlight for the average person who the big players are?
That, like I was saying before, it is hard to see, okay, just a name. And a lot of times on these financial reports, it's, similar interests. They all gave it the same day, so it's a little easier to put them together. But, an officer, the name of an officer in one pack and how that applies to, and I think the names are listed there, of individuals who are then associated with the Stevens Group or work for the Stevens Group. Same thing with, the healthcare association group. There's specific individuals who are associated and tied in with that. Michael Mort, David Norsworthy. These names that you see over and over again, it's really one interest, even though it's separated out among different PACs, different individuals. It's kind of the same interest that is represented. And we wanted to be able to show people what that interest is and then the financial impact of that interest in these races.
So, yeah, just to name a few, okay, you've got the Stevens Group broken down, the Walton family broken down, Arkansas Healthcare Association broken down, DBH Management Consultants broken down, Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce. Then you have big players who donated under $20,000. Now, we also have this page right here, Commerce in Action. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talk a little bit about this, because I think it's a good. It's good that we, that this is out there as well. This is the Limited Government Conservative, Political Action Committee, and they're putting out money as well here.
Yeah, it's a public record that Commerce in Action associated PACs are very involved in elections and give a lot of money to candidates that are limited government, conservative, pro-small business candidates. And we wanted to include that in the picture because that's State of Arkansas politics. And so when you look at that and kind of see that number, it's, a significant number and lines up with some of these other interests. But when you add all those other interests together and how they're basically unified compared to, Commerce in Action and, not just groups or individuals.
I think we've lost Josh. Josh, are you there? Well, we have to go to break anyway. Hey, folks, it's really good stuff. Great information. You're not going to get this anywhere else. It's on the front page right now of conduitnews.com. This brand new Follow the Money report that Conduit for Commerce has produced, and it is up right now at conduitnews.com. Back in just a moment.
Ideas of what they consider to be the here today, gone tomorrow politicians. They are the guardians of the national interest. They know how things should be run, and their goal is to block you. You have to understand that, and you have to get that from day one and be ready to fight them and beat them. And that was from a former Labour Prime Minister. And when I heard that back then, I took it very seriously and hence, got into my own battles with the civil service. But when you come right up to date here in America now, that's the deep state. That's exactly what it is. It's a group of people who believe that they know best, that they're there, they're there beyond any one administration, beyond any elected.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we lost Josh Waters there towards the end, but it's okay. I think we've got the point, and this report is going to do a whole lot. I mean, if you want to dive in, the information's there. It's been assembled by the great people at Conduit for Commerce, and it's there to educate. It's there as a tool to try to. We last hour we were talking with the patriots of Act 746, and they're on a mission to educate about the Second Amendment. Well, you also have pro-free market, pro-economic groups that are also there. To educate and really and truly, it makes like a very well-rounded, balanced thing when you actually look at the type of society we're trying to have here. This is an incredible tool to get the word out, to really shine the light of truth in a dark place. And I say dark not to say that these other special interests, who are controlling things I'm not saying that they're necessarily, evil, but they are a very, very small group of people, very, very small, tight-knit circle. And, the less people, I said this the other day, the less people that know about, how an organization works or how a system works, the more opportunity there is for corruption, because they'll never find out, right? When you have people, for example, I mean, this is not in the report, but I mean, we've tried to highlight this before, that, if you have somebody who's the recipient, whose livelihood depends on money from the government, then that entity is then expected to tie the portion of that money that they're getting from the government to the chosen political action committees that can then fund the candidates that are going to make sure the status quo remains the same. And this is why Arkansas has such a big government, by the way.
Official, and they run the show, and they don't like it when their power is disturbed. And the problem is for them that up till now, certainly for the last few decades, they've had politicians come along who basically go along with them, who in the end agree to their plans. And now they've got someone in the form of Donald Trump who just doesn't accept that at all, and just chucks it all out and says, no, I'm sorry, I don't agree. We're going to do it this way. And they really hate that, and that's why they're trying to undermine him at every stage. But it's very helpful, I think, that that's all now out in the open, that we're talking about the deep state. And even things like the anonymous letter in the New York Times the other week, in a way that's really helpful. It kind of proves that this talk of the deep state is not some conspiracy theory. It's real. They really are there, and they're trying to block the elected president from delivering his promises.
Yeah, they are. They're trying to basically undermine a duly elected president. And everything you just said, I completely agree with, Steve. That's exactly right. They think they know better, and it's almost like they have a disdain for our democratic process. Now, it does mention in your book about the excessive power of corporations. I'd love to get your response on this, because the way I see it, the line is getting blurred between where government ends and these, quote, private corporations begin. It seems like they're kind of working together. We're certainly seeing this with the deep state in Silicon Valley right now.
Particularly for conservatives and those on the right, it's really important to understand something. Of course, we should be pro-business and pro the private sector, because without the private sector, without business, you don't have any of the wealth generated that we all take for granted, and you don't get all the products and services that make the world a better place. But as well as that, we need to be pro-market, and that means being pro-competition. And the trouble is, in too many industries today, there is not enough competition. In sector after sector of the economy, you've seen a couple or just a handful of giant corporations being allowed to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they basically use lobbyists and campaign donations in Washington to allow them to gobble up the competitors and stitch up the marketplace. And that has ended up with a situation where you've got this astronomical salaries paid, and the businesses do really well, but their workers are treated poorly and communities suffer, and it has a bad impact on society. And it particularly, as you mentioned, in tech, a classic case where you've just seen a tiny number of companies become way too dominant. And so I think what we've got to do is really think, well, how do you deal with that? And the answer, I think, is to use antitrust policy to bring in much more competition, and where necessary, to break up these giant companies. And I think tech is a good example, where I think that you should start by reversing the power grabs. These companies like Google and Facebook, they've got so big by buying up other companies. So let's make Google sell YouTube and Android, the mobile phone system.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, the Center for Research and Economics, the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, on the campus of the University of Central Arkansas. We've had guests from this great organization on before. Recently, there was an article that caught my eye. I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the screen for everybody here.
so you can see it there. It is an article by a friend of mine, Mr. Caleb Taylor, and he writes that this particular Arkansas county has the most transparent government. And it basically, the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, they've come out with this transparency index. And it's the first one that they've done where they go county by county, and then they rank which counties in the state of Arkansas have the best transparency. Now, Washington County, according to this article Caleb Taylor wrote, received the highest overall transparency score, with Pulaski County, Benton, Garland, and Baxter rounding out the top 5. Here's the issue, though. For context, Arkansas counties earned an F grade in the 2013 Transparency Report Card produced by the Sunshine Review. And so here to talk more about that, I would like to welcome from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, we have a policy analyst, Dr. Mavuto Kalulu, is here with us on the line, and the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics Program Director, Tara Acquia, joins us now. Guys, welcome to the program. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, we're excited to talk to you.
Okay, so let's just talk about transparency in general. I think most of us understand that it's important, but what do you guys think?
So based on the research that we've looked at, transparency is very, very important for a couple of reasons. I'll mention 5 of them here. It enhances the accountability. It also instills fiscal discipline. It also improves economic performance. It reduces corruption. And it also improves the relationship between government and citizens. So if you want to go like anecdotally, we don't even have to go very far to see how transparency reduces the cost of information requests. Just close by our neighbors, Mississippi. The Mississippi Department of Finance estimates that for every information request fulfilled by its transparency website, rather than by state employee, it saves them between $750 and $1,000 in staff time. So you can see that the transparency is really important in so many ways.
Yeah, especially, at the local level. I think a lot of people would assume that, hey, the local level, of course we're transparent, but that's not the case, not here. Well, you tell me, is that the case? And let's just think about the internet and whether or not some of this stuff is on the internet. What did you guys find? I mean, can the average citizen just go online and look up the documents they need, the information they need from their county?
In the state of Arkansas, for the most part, the answer to that would be no. And when we were starting to talk about transparency as a research topic, and we started looking through past reports and past research that the state had already done, we did take a look at what you already mentioned, the 2013 Sunshine Study, that said the state government in Arkansas actually did okay. They ended up scoring a B, but at the county level, counties really struggled. And so that was the point where we decided to really invest in some research time looking at the county level to see what information is there and what information isn't. And so our index is basically a summary of that information.
Yeah. I'm reminded, of course, I see here you've got county governments that they provide the services that really have a direct impact on our lives. And I think there was a story out of Fort Smith where, they were collecting the fees for, recycling. It turns out they weren't actually recycling. They were just taking the trash and putting it in a regular landfill. And so we do need some transparency here.
Yeah, so when such things happen, like we say, the county governments are very, very important because the services they provide, they affect the daily lives of every constituent. So when such money is not being used in the right way, it's the constituents that are suffering because of that. So people need to know what exactly is happening.
So this is the inaugural index about county transparency, the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics. We're talking with Dr. Mavuto Kalulu as well as Tara Acquia. So tell us a little bit about the methodology. I mean, how did you go about this particular transparency index?
So So when we first started looking into the study, we decided very quickly that we wanted to focus primarily on web transparency, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, more people, just nationally, more people overall are using the internet as their main source to get information. So a Pew study showed that internet usage and strictly using the internet as an information source rose from 52% in 2000 to 89% more recently in 2018. So not only that, but more Arkansans are using the internet as their main way to get information, which I know there's a misconception, Arkansas is a very rural state. How many of these counties actually have access to resources and things like that? But according to the most recent 2018 FCC report, as of 2016, 58% of Arkansas's rural population actually has access to faster internet, and that's up from 16% in 2013. So just in a 3-year period, there's been a huge jump in internet usage in the state, which is really awesome and exciting, and really all the more reason to push for having more web transparency at the county level.
Okay, so it is focused on essentially using this amazing tool called the internet, get the information out there. Well, what kind of information though? Like what are you needing to put on the internet?
So what we did was the first thing was to look at the we didn't want to start like from scratch. We looked at the other assessments that have been conducted in other states and a few that have even been conducted here in Arkansas, including the Sunshine Review. So what we did, the reason we did that was we wanted to look at what information do they include when they are calculating their index. So we compiled all that information. Then the next thing was to go through the county websites and look whether they have that information or not. If they have that information, we assign a value of 1. If they don't, then we assign a value of 0. Then after that, we did a bunch of calculations, which our report explains very well in greater detail, but I'm not going to go into that. But most of them is like we are averaging out a lot of information so that we come up with the overall score. And that overall score, it's on a scale of 0 to 1. So the overall score for us, we actually have to divide the different types of transparency into 3. Then after that, we did a bunch of calculations and came up with the overall score.
So in your results, what was the number one? The most transparent county according to this new index.
So according to our most recent index, the most transparency county in Arkansas currently is Washington County. And so what that means is they provide more information on their county website than any other county in the state. So they provide more fiscal information, more administrative, and more political information on their county websites for their citizens to access.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you need counties to improve, needed more of the counties to look more like Washington County, what kind of information, what ideas should the other folks, JPs who are listening right now, what should they do?
So what we did, like I said, was to break down the transparency into 3 different types. So the first one is the fiscal transparency, which is the disclosure of financial information, such as budgets. Then the second one is administrative transparency, which is the openness of local officials' activities and the processes, such as the bidding processes. People need to know what's going on with the contracts.
Yes.
Political transparency, which is the openness of elected officials and quorum codes, such as their meeting times, place, agendas, and minutes. So people need to know what's going on in the quorum codes. They need to be informed so that they can participate. So based on all that, even when we give our recommendation, we're looking at these 3 different types of transparency so that each county can identify which area they are the weakest. So in terms of the recommendations that we make, I'll hand over to Mr. Akuya, who can give us the recommendations.
Yeah, so some recommendations we have, just not for any particular county, just overall, because there's room even for Washington County, the best counties, to worst to all improve, and improve pretty quickly. So some things that we recommend are to, first of all, just, sit down and evaluate your county. Do you have a website? Are you using an ar.gov website? Like, what is your platform for getting your information to the public? And so after you've evaluated that, the types of information that we're looking for that would really just improve transparency the most are things like uploading your annual budget to your website, or updating links to your audit information. So updating your current and past bids and bid winners. Who is your county hiring? How much are you paying them? Who is getting the work in your county? And then, of course, financial disclosures, things like that for state employees, and then court meetings and court minutes. So giving your constituents the information they need to, if they want to get involved, how do they go about doing that? And that's really what it all boils down to, is at the county level, it's really important for the elected officials to be telling the people who live in their communities, hey, we want you to get involved. Here's the information you need to do that. Here's meeting minutes. Here is our budget. Here's what we're spending your money on. And increasing that transparency just honestly by promoting openness and promoting transparency at the county level.
So I saw where it says, and we're talking with the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, Dr. Mavuto Kalulu and Tara Acquia. I saw where this is the inaugural index on this, county transparency issue. So I imagine next year, we're going to have the same report come out. Are there going to be any differences there?
So that's actually a good point. That pertains to the future plans about this index. So this assessment basically should be viewed as a diagnosis of county web transparency in Arkansas. So our plan is to release the report every other year, emphasizing not only on the score, but on the improvement counties have made. So it's something that some counties have already started to do. We've seen the counties like Faulkner County, they've already started improving on their transparency. So that's what will count more when we release the next index.
What about the, you've got the session coming up in January of next year with the Arkansas General Assembly. I mean, would you want them to do anything? Is there anything legislatively that you could do to say, hey, these are the requirements, you've got to give your citizens XYZ, you've got to give them this information?
Yes, for sure. So the Arkansas Code currently requires counties publish their financial information, basically their budget. They publish their annual financial report annually in a local newspaper in their county. So whatever newspaper in their county has the highest circulation, they're required to annually post a financial report in that paper. So this was probably a good policy when it happened. It, again, is emphasizing that transparency. Yearly, you do need to know what your county is planning on spending your tax dollars on and things like that. But given the research showing not only just in Arkansas, but overall, people aren't using newspapers as much to get their information. They want to be able to go online and find what they're looking for quickly and easily without having to pay a lot of money to do it. And so one of our big recommendations from a policy angle would be to take a look at that code and see if it needs updating, to see if maybe the time has passed for annual budget reports in a paper. Maybe that needs to transition online. So that's something that we would hope someone would consider at a legislative angle. Yeah,
and I see some of these findings here. Only 18, according to the research here, only 18 counties published quorum court meeting times and places online. Wow, I mean that's pretty unacceptable. I think
it's way too low. We would rather have 75 counties publish quorum court meetings times and places online.
So I asked you. I guess I asked you which county did the best, but I mean, I guess are there multiple counties? I mean, Washington, Pulaski. Who else did fairly well?
So our about the halfway point for the study. Even then, there's still, like we've said before, there's drastic room for every county in Arkansas to improve. But the fact that only 4 counties in Arkansas did score even at that halfway point or higher shows that there's a lot of work to be done with the rest of the county.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I appreciate you dedicating yourself to this, this study and, transparency. I mean, I want transparency, at all forms of government, and I think most people, whether wherever you fall on the political, partisan scale, you want to be able to know what your government is doing. Okay, so if people want to go and they want to get this this index, this transparency index from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, where can they go?
Yeah, so you can find our full study on our website at www.uca.edu/acre. And so it is right there, very prominent on the front page of our home screen. To find the rest of our research on transparency, you visit the ACRE website. And under our research areas tab, you can click down to transparency, and that's where you can find not only this report, but all of our op-eds and other research that we've done on the subject. Well,
so you guys actually publish your studies online. I mean, imagine that.
Being transparent.
That's right. You guys are transparent in your research. Well, hey, I appreciate it, Dr. Kalulu and Tara Acquia. I really appreciate you guys coming on this morning, and I'd love to have you on again soon to talk about the next study.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us.
All right.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Official, and they run the show, and they don't like it when their power is disturbed. And the problem is for them that up till now, certainly for the last few decades, they've had politicians come along who basically go along with them, who in the end agree to their plan. And now they've got someone in the form of Donald Trump who just doesn't accept that at all and just chucks it all out and says, no, I'm sorry, I don't agree, we're going to do it this way. And they really hate that, and that's why they're trying to undermine him at every stage. But it's very helpful, I think, that that's all now out in the open, that we're talking about the deep state, and even things like the anonymous letter in the New York Times the other week. In a way, that's really helpful. It kind of proves that this talk of the deep state is not some conspiracy theory. It's real. they really are there, and they're trying to block the elected president from delivering his promises.
Yeah, they are. They're trying to basically undermine a duly elected president. And everything you just said, I completely agree with, Steve. That's exactly right. They think they know better.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, so we got disconnected. Welcome back to the program, folks. We got disconnected earlier when we were talking to Mr. Josh Waters, and we were talking about the new Follow the Money report that's up right now at conduitnews.com from Conduit for Commerce. Josh, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Paul, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm on the road to Little Rock this morning. The tax task force is meeting, so I encourage people to stay tuned to conduitnews.com, Conduit News Twitter for updates on that. But really just wanted to call in and encourage people to go out there and support Conduit for Commerce. You know, this Follow the Money report, the legislative scorecard, all the other educational reports and presentations they do, and the other Conduit organizations as well, Conduit for Action. They can support your show through Patreon. And I just want to call in and encourage people, if they appreciate all the information that's put out there, to go online at conduitforcommerce.org and donate there online. It's very simple. Just wanted to encourage your listeners on that, and just appreciate the opportunity to come on and everything that you do, Paul.
And I really appreciate you calling back in to say that, because I would echo that. You know, you can't accept, or Conduit for Commerce does accept donations. For those of you who are just joining us and you missed the first part of this hour, we talked to Josh about this new report. It is shining. It's really a sunshine. I'm sorry, sunshine on what is a really dark, environment in terms of following the money. Who are the kingmakers? This report is detailed. I mean, it is very specific in Republican primaries, who supports who, and you see the same players over and over and over again. And that's why this is so valuable. In reports like this, presentations like this, it requires money to operate. Josh, I know you would agree.
Yes, that at the end of the day, it's something we say: knowledge is power, and liberty is not free. And so I just say that, encourage people however they can support, a monthly basis, yearly basis. There's so many different ways they can support, and it would encourage people to do that.
All right, Josh Waters, you have fun at the task force meeting. Have a good time.
All righty. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Folks, you can follow Conduit News' Twitter. It's just at Conduit News, and go to conduitnews.com to check out this report. I'm just going to read for you the takeaways of the report. It's towards the end here. If you want to know which way the political winds are blowing, it helps to know which way the campaign cash is flowing. By tracking the funding of selected Republican primaries in 2018, Conduit for Commerce presents this comprehensive report to educate on who has the greatest influence on government policies in the state of Arkansas. In summary, this report reveals how big government establishment candidates were primarily supported by a monolith of individuals, corporations, and PACs that represent Arkansas special interests, which then work together as a finely oiled machine to elect their preferred candidates. Conduit for Commerce educates on the benefits of economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government to ensure the highest quality of life for all Arkansans. In order to achieve this mission, Conduit for Commerce focuses on Arkansas small business first, as they are the backbone of a strong economy that can improve lives. And then, of course, to support Conduit for Commerce, you can go to conduitforcommerce.org. This is a fantastic report. My favorite part is how they call out the big players. I love how they call out specifically the special interests. They've done the research, and it was hard to do. You heard Josh talk about how, look, okay, this person who gave the maximum contribution of $2,700, okay, is this person also on the board of a political action committee? Ah, yes. Well, did that political action committee also give to the same candidate? They did. Okay, so they represent the same interests. So person individually giving $2,700. Okay, this person individually gives $2,700, but is also works for a lobbyist group, and this lobbying group has a client that healthcare special interest or education, whatever the case may be. Okay, so now we're going to say and deduce, okay, this $2,700 individual contribution to the same candidate that the Political Action Committee made, or that the lobbying firm is making money off of the special interest by, being on retainer. Then you can kind of infer which money is allied with whom, or, with what. So that is the report. It's up right now at conduitnews.com. Check it out. Really great research that is done, and I think you're going to enjoy it. All right, that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to end my my bumbling broadcast, and we will see you tomorrow for Thursday. I want to remind everybody, Conduit for Action will be in Arkansas County in DeWitt tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Bullpen Restaurant, giving a presentation to the Arkansas Republican County Committee. We got to end the show, rather. Thankfully. We'll see you tomorrow. Be safe, Arkansas.